Welcome to Project Ocean's Coffee Convo, where mental health topics are unpacked, one cup at a time. This episode is on disappointment and coping strategies.
My name is Mylea Ang. I'm sure all of you know me in some capacity. And my partner here is Dana. And I don't know if Dana, if you wanted to give any slight introductions on ourselves, but I could go first and let you know that I'm an undergraduate peer educator for Project Ocean. I help out with social media, and I'm excited to talk about this today because we're nearing the end of the year. There's been a lot of things happening. How have we been dealing with these things that pop up that don't go the way we want it to? And how can we move forward in the future more positively? So excited for that. And then Dana.
Yeah, I can jump in. So I'm Dana. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a graduate peer educator with Project Ocean. I am also excited to talk about this today just because in the past, disappointment has been something that I've been coping with over time, and being able to sort of talk about it, being able to say these things without feeling any shame. I'm pretty excited to have a chance to sort of process and share this space with everyone.
Great. Thank you. And I'm sure we all are today. And then Brenda, thank you for coming in. Would you be open to sharing a little bit of a quick introduction, with your name, gear, major, minor, what you're looking forward to learning today?
All right. Thank you for the little heads up, Mylea. So my name is Brenda Payan. I am a public relations major, and I am also getting close to graduation, but as the topic of this coffee shop is disappointment, that's something that has been holding me back a lot. Is because what's the whole main topic of this event? Disappointment and what else?
Coping strategies.
Coping strategies, right. And I guess for me, disappointments have just been a constant in my life. So getting away from them has been my main strive for my mental health, because it's weighed down on me so much to where finally I feel like I'm reaching a point where I'm learning how to deal with these disappointments, but acknowledging that it has been hard and validating its effect has really helped me move forward. So I guess being able to talk about what's helped me and what's helped others, and validating all of that stuff, I feel like that'll be a great use of all of our time. So yeah.
Yes, and I love that. I know that it's a hard journey, right? Sometimes we fall into that negative way of thinking of our disappointments or of things going on that don't go the way we want it to, and it can be hard to get out of that. And I'm really glad to hear that you've been finding new ways and new steps, no matter how small they are, of moving forward and being able to get through that even if it's hard. So thank you for opening up about that and sharing with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And I'm so happy to learn more today that we can I'm glad we can open this conversation up. This is really important to talk about. And I don't know, Karen, if you wanted to share anything, or we should move forward.
Sorry, I'm joining in kind of late.
No worries.
It's really nice hearing what everyone's sharing today. I think for me, when I'm talking about disappointment and how to cope with it, it's always a learning curve, right? Especially in a way where I've been starting a side business. There was a lot of pivoting moments. Sorry, I kind of have to step out for 1 sec, but I'm going to resume this conversation. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Karen. And so we could hop into some of our own coffee conversation today. We have some questions we wanted to go over and things we want to talk about. And so, Dana, I'm sorry, did you want to start off, or do you want me to start it off?
Sure, I can take it. So we'll start off with our very first question, and we can also go ahead and put these in the chat just so it's easier to remember. But what does personal disappointment look like to you?
would say like, oh, sorry. And for, okay, so there's a slight pause here. Sorry, that's for editing. But I would say that like for me, personal like disappointment, like it kind of ties into like the feelings of like anxiety as well. That like, I start to worry like, oh, I didn't like get like the exact grade I wanted, or oh, like I didn't like finish this like in this amount of time. Like sometimes I'll set goals for myself, but like, they're not the most like, it seems like I'll be able to do them at the beginning of the day, but I don't think about like, but I divide it by time. I don't divide it by energy or by capacity or by like anything else that might pop up, like wanting to spend time with people and like, things like that. And then like I fall into this like cycle of like, oh, I didn't get to this goal today, or like, I didn't finish this assignment, or like, I should have worked harder on that assignment to get a higher grade. And a lot of it is like academic. I feel like growing up, a lot of the pressure to perform was on academia. And so I think that's why like my disappointment hits the hardest there, is that if I feel like I'm not performing like as like high as I should be, then like I feel like anxious. I feel like, oh, like I don't know, like, am I going to be able to do this, or like am I going to be able to finish this thing? Is it going to be all right? And so they kind of tie together, because I'm like disappointed in myself for like not like, reaching those standards I set, but I'm also anxious because I'm like, oh, since I didn't reach those standards, like what's gonna happen next? Like, am I, and then I like, and then it's like a thing of like, oh, like am I like not doing something right, or oh, like, I should have done something better, and then it becomes even more of like a me problem. And so I think that that's what I struggle with like personal disappointment, was like those feelings tied together, and then putting it all on top of myself and like blaming myself instead of trying to like be patient. Yeah. And so that's just how it looks to me. I'm like hoping, hey, that we'll talk more about like coping and like how to move forward for that. But yeah, that's what I'm struggling with sometimes.
I can jump in next. I feel that a lot too, Mai. I think that especially when you get to the sort of like, oh, it's something that I didn't do good enough. And I think for me, it tends to revolve around like a feeling of like self-worth. And I think that's rough, right? So I think about it once, because there is something that the trouble with me is that disappointment is often attached to a feeling of hope, right? And it's when your hopes get let down that then you therefore feel disappointed. And that's so hard, because I'm a very hopeful person and I hope for a lot of things, and I tend to be pretty optimistic. So it comes in turn where sometimes when things don't work out, it hits pretty hard. So I think that, for example, like this hasn't happened recently, but in the very beginning of like me starting this program, I started applying for a job that I really wanted, and I really wanted to work with this specific area, and I was like, oh, I am completely qualified for this. It was sort of that sense of like, it would make less sense for me to not get this job. But then lo and behold, I did not get that job. And that whole thing sort of like made my whole world come crashing down. I was like suddenly questioning, and I was like, I have all this experience, I have all this reasoning to be able to get this job. I thought I did well in my interview, all these things, right? And then I was just so disappointed that I just had this like breakdown on my friends. So it really hit so bad. And I'm just like, oh man, looking back on it, it's rough. I even like had to talk to like my professors, and I had to be like, I'm really disappointed because of this thing that happened. Am I not meant to be in this field? Should I not be doing this anymore? And I think that it's one of those things where it's sort of like I like catastrophize the whole situation. And that's one of the things that like therapy is great for, because I was able to identify that with my therapist. But being able to say that for some reason, when my hopes get let down, it then results in this thing where I just sort of like panic really hard, and I sort of question everything that led me to that moment, right? And that's not great. It's not a great feeling to have. And I think it's important to recognize that, but also like when I look back on it, it's both embarrassing to see the way that like that felt for me, but also everyone who held space for me in that moment that I was able to confide in, they said, don't worry about it. It makes sense. Like, and that was, I think, something that I really appreciate, where it's sort of like, yes, it's hard to recognize the ways in which disappointment can be really painful, but also I was lucky in the sense that I was able to have people around me who could like be like almost like temperature checks of being like, no, you're not being ridiculous about this and your feelings are validated. So I thought that was pretty nice.
Absolutely. You deserve to have your feelings validated. I mean, like, you felt solid about it. You felt like it's resonating, like, oh, this is like, like in your gut, like this is the one. And then to have it be something else, like I can understand how that would be disappointing. And I can completely I can see where your friends are coming from, that like, that you're only human, and that like sometimes like life doesn't work out like exactly how we want it to, even if we are the most outstanding like citizen, or like the most qualified, that there might be other forces at work that just change that for us. And that, hey, maybe a different path might turn out even better. Like now you're going to Santa Cruz, you're going to be able to have your dog with you, you're going to have a nice your own spot out there as our head of an RA program. Like that is amazing. And but I am sorry that it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. But where you are now, I'm really glad that you've reached this point, and that you had friends there who are able to walk you through it and like be there for you. Because when that happens, it can feel like a heartbreak. So we need people to like be there with us, and like to cry on our shoulders, and have ice cream and watch like sappy movies sometimes. And you mentioned like catastrophizing. Could you like describe more like what that like idea is?
Yes, so catastrophizing is basically, it is one of the cognitive distortions that you might experience when something goes wrong. And it's really common, like in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a type of therapy, there are really common cognitive distortions because they happen to everybody, right? So catastrophizing is an example of where if like one thing goes wrong, you go, oh God, my life is over. And I mean, I laugh about it, but at the same time, that's what it felt like. And I think that just happens sometimes, where you think, oh, you make one small mistake in like a relationship, and then you go, this person must hate me now. And then that's very rarely the case. And when you look back on it and look back logically, you're like, this really went like 0 to 100. And that is sort of the idea of catastrophizing, and being able to see that and identify that is something that could be useful when you are looking back and seeing the ways in which like your brain will just do things, and then you have to sort of like reel it back a little bit.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah, and I agree. Like I feel like I've done that myself, like in a lot, like especially coming out of like the pandemic and only talking over Zoom, like moving back to in-person like interactions and like socializing. Like I feel like I've done that a lot, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I hope I didn't sound rude. Like what if they don't want to talk to me anymore? Oh my gosh, like I hope that joke like landed right. Like what if they just think I'm like, weird? Like that's popping up more and more. But like you said, it's good, like we're recognizing it, and like that's all we can do to start moving forward. So yeah, how about you, Karen and Brenda?
Hi, sorry that I got like sidetracked and joining in late, but are we answering the question that Dana put up at prompt?
Yeah, I know you didn't get to finish answering earlier during the introductions. I don't know if you still wanted to mention like what you're hoping to gain, and then answer the personal disappointment question if you wanted to.
Sure. I mean, I just wanted to get more thoughts and ideas from everyone that's going to share today about how they cope with their disappointments, because I go about it a certain way, but maybe learning in other ways how I can also incorporate that for future. So that's what I want to take away from this conversation. And then let me dive into Dana's question about what does personal disappointment look like to me. I think for me, disappointment is when I set certain standards and expectations of whatever it is that I'm happen to be working on in life. So whether it's with work or relationships, and relationships with different people, whether it's friends and family. I have certain expectations for myself that I want to build upon. So I had moments, of course, like everyone else, where I haven't met my expectations. And I think it's been a big learning curve in the past 2 years, just as for everyone else with the pandemic. There's been a lot of disappointments because we have to pivot and adjust what we're working on and how we do go about doing it. So for me, when I work on a side business that I do, I had to change it completely from how I was normally doing it and taking it and running with how this is going to work. And a lot of it was trial and error. And it was just, a lot of it is like, okay, I'm just going to put it out there and see if it works. And there were moments where I failed and it did not work. And it was okay because I was able to learn from it and take that data and pivot it again and see how am I going to change it again and see if that works. And there was a lot of that for like a year or two where I dropped the ball on certain things. And like, I was lucky that I had people in my life that were able to, provide that feedback. And so that kind of goes tie into what Dana said, where you're able to like talk to your friends about what you're going through. And they give you some pointers and feedback, and that it's okay to kind of drop the ball sometimes, because that's how else are you going to learn if you don't kind of drop that ball and fail sometimes. And I don't really like to use the word fail, because you're not really failing if you're still learning from something that, it's a learning curve all the time. So I don't really like to use that word too much. I think I'm going off topic now, but yeah, that's been my year as far as disappointment and how to cope. I'll send it off to whoever wants to share next.
I can go next. Thank you, Karen. But I could agree with everything you guys said about personal disappointment. For me, I guess that would vary. But again, like how y'all said, like setting standards or having expectations and then putting my all into it, and then it doesn't meet my expectations at all. It just crumbles. And then I'm thinking like, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? And then I try to find ways to blame myself. Also, personal disappointment would look like for me whenever I disappoint others, because that's always something I always hated doing, was just disappointing other people. But overall, in the past year, this all finally got to me, and it made me reach my breaking point where I felt like I just went insane. And so now what I've been doing to help deal with disappointment is that basically I've been coming to accept like I can't control anything. Like I literally can't. I can try my best and I can hope for the best, but whatever happens, the only other choice I have is to just keep moving forward. And I've even come to the point where I can accept when the worst things happen, because I've accepted that that's just life. Like whenever something that I used to think was the worst, like right now, I've had to drop out of 2 classes, and I've had to sign up with like different programs to get help. And this has been making me feel like, or it had been making me feel really bad before, because I was always an overachiever. Every time I did my best, usually things would turn out pretty great academically, but then after a certain point, my best just wasn't enough anymore. I wasn't getting the best grades anymore, and this was weighing me down. But then I realized, well, there's nothing I can do about this, but take care of my own body and my own mind. So I had to come to terms with my pride and have to drop everything that I once considered to be successful to take care of myself, and to realize that no matter how hard I try for my best, there will always be people that see it as like my worst, and there's nothing I can do to control other people's perspectives. But all I can do is just focus more on the present and just, I guess, ignore what other people think, and just being in the present moment and reminding myself that the worst is still okay. Like it's still, like everyone goes through all of this. Life will never be 100% good, and that is okay. Success and disappointment will always change throughout life, so I've just come to accept that. And then I've been trying to quiet my mind, so whenever I start getting like any thoughts about anything, any type of judgment. I just try to like calm myself down and just not think and just enjoy whatever's going on in the present moment. But yeah.
Just to echo on that a little bit, about success and what is your definition of success. I think that it definitely does change over time. Just throughout your life, like all the experiences that you kind of experience, all the ups and the downs, it really does change your perspective about what success means to you, and learning how to navigate what society puts as the definition of success is versus what you think of what it is. And I think it takes a long time to create that definition for you. It probably is going to change a lot over time. I think at least it did for me. I feel like I used to think in order to be successful, I have to have a certain type of job, and that I need to be making an X amount of money and all of these things, a lot of it was like society made me feel that way. And over time, I just kind of like have been changing that definition for myself. So I'm starting to like cultivate a different lifestyle for myself. And for me, that means, taking care of my mental health and making sure that my relationships with everyone around me are in a good place, and also communicating with them, how I function as a person. Like I might take a step back sometimes, and like I'm not as available as maybe I hope to be or wish to be. Like I wish I could be a better friend sometimes, and I wish I could be more present for them, but sometimes I can't be. And communicating that to them and letting them know that, hey, I'm just going through something, but I'll reach back out again when I'm ready, just so that they know. And obviously, if they're your friends and your family, they're going to be understanding about it. So yeah, a lot of navigation in life.
Yeah, and I actually just wanted to jump on that too, because I think like you're all saying such wise things, and I think talking a little bit about like that sense of like, not only this is who I used to be and suddenly it feels like you're not that person anymore, but also the idea that maybe society is just telling you that is who you are expected to be, and having to navigate that, right? Because I think like, so science shows that there is a cap on how happy money can make you. There is like a certain level of salary where like after that point, more money will not be like make the thing that makes you happier, even though society in general is always just like, but after I make just a little bit more money, then I will be happy. And that's actually not proven at all. There's genuinely just like a stopping point. And I think that's something that's important to think about, because a lot of these societal expectations and the disappointment that we feel, is it that we are feeling disappointment in ourselves and who we want to be? Or are we feeling disappointed that we are not who society expects us to be? And I think that is just something that like that came up for me when Karen was speaking, and I was just like, whoa, maybe I should think about that. Maybe it's just because this person that I am, even though I am happy and I am doing things that I need to take care of myself in order to survive, to thrive, get through all of this, is just not matching up to the messaging that I'm getting, right? And I think that messaging is also inherently flawed. So I think it's something important to think about when we're sort of processing all this. Like, yes, disappointment happens and sometimes it's valid. A lot of the time it's not. And just when that feeling comes up, just remembering that we are enough, that you are enough, and who you are does not need to change in order to meet anybody's sort of like, this is who you should be in order to be quote unquote successful.
Yes, and I love this. I'm loving everyone's transparency and honesty, and like thank you so much for sharing all these different parts of yourselves. But I have to agree that like thinking on it now, like I'm really glad we're having more and more spaces like talking about mental health like this, because like I feel like you're saying, there's this certain image and like certain expectations in society that like we feel that we were kind of raised to like yearn for and see as like the epitome of success. And like at the end of the day, like even like, in my classes and in my work, like what am I really disappointed about? It's me like not feeling like I'm succeeding enough, or like I'm not going to succeed enough because I haven't like finished all these expectations. But at the same time, like, my definition of success doesn't have to be like, all these like always accomplishing like everything I set out to do. It could be doing like taking some care of myself, or like stepping back and like recognizing that, hey, like, this might not be like the path that I want to go to, or like maybe this isn't the goal that I want, but like there's other ways of achieving that. There's other ways for me to find happiness. And it doesn't have to just be like that one image. Like I know in the past we talked about like hustle culture and like productivity culture, and like, how like in the past convos we've had like we've mentioned like how multitasking is like a myth, and like all these things that like, society like that we don't really see like in our everyday lives. And so I'm glad, like, thank you guys for sharing and like talking about this today, and like remembering, like reminding each other that like it's okay to have like a different idea for where you want to be than like what like the society wants you to be, and that's still successful as long as you are happy, and you feel like content and healthy with yourself. And so you guys like touched a lot upon like really great ideas of like, of how you guys have been facing these disappointments. And so it kind of touches on our next question of how have you coped with disappointment in your life, and has it worked? And so that's going to be our next question. And I'm not sure if anyone would want to head on and start. I'm going to think a little bit more too.
I could share a little bit more, since I already answered that question in the last one. But another way that I have coped with disappointment in my life was by going towards people that I knew would be compassionate towards me, or that are willing to help, give me advice, or just validate what I'm going through. But I've also come to a point where, because a lot of those worries are in my own mind, that can only go so far. I have to do the rest of the work to get there. So that's where I've come in with basically removing like judgments of myself. Like, no matter how hard you judge yourself, no matter how hard people are going to judge you, like where you're at is just where you're at. The most you can do is empty your thoughts, stop judging yourself, and find a direction to move forward. It's the only thing you can do. And yeah, and so far that's something I've been doing recently, and it is working, but it takes time to build on it. Yay to where now like I've been like getting some pretty bad grades, and at this point I'm like, it is what it is. I'm just gonna keep going forward. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm just tired of dealing with the work, but it's working though.
It sounds like you're building up a good, like we talk about this in like our KPRs, and like a lot of our material is like building up this support system, and like finding like, people you can turn to if you're like feeling down or having a bad day. And so I'm glad that you're like reaching out, because it can be hard to find the right support system, or like to feel comfortable talking about it. So that's good that you're building that for yourself. And I'm glad that it's been working, and you've been able to battle the negative thoughts too, because sometimes those just run like marathons in our heads, and it's hard to shut those off. And so it's great that like you're finding like you're trying to like find this peace instead of like listening to those like negative echoes. Thank you, Brenda.
I can jump in next, Maya, if you want. I think that, for one, also, I just want to say grades are also proven to be bad for happiness. There's so much in our society that is just like anti-happiness, and you're just like, why did we do this? So I'm really glad that genuinely you are figuring out what works for you, and I think it's important to do that, because you're right. You take care of yourself. We're all just sort of trying to survive against this sort of society that is, like I said, inherently anti-happiness for whatever reason. And managing with that. I think that I'll share something that hasn't worked. So I want to acknowledge that there is a thing that I used to do. And it's really funny because it comes with the story. But I used to think that if I set my hopes lower, then I won't be as disappointed, because I was like, when like it hits and you tank, you're just like, wow, maybe I should just stop expecting such high things. And I would also keep like all of that to myself. And it led to this point where I did that for a really long time. And then I went to a restaurant with my college roommates. And then I got a fortune cookie and it said, "Those who expect nothing are never disappointed." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, cool, that makes sense. But then my roommate was just like, "That sounds really sad." And I was like, "Does it?" I had to go, "Oh no, have I been doing this wrong the entire time?" And I mean, when I look back on it, I was like, okay, it works in the sense that it's a band-aid, right? Where if you expect less from the people around you, you probably will be disappointed less, maybe, right? Because I also think there is always going to be that small sense of disappointment because you can't stop hope. And I think that's like a really wonderful thing. You can't stop it from happening. And therefore, when you do get disappointed, even if you don't admit it to yourself, you feel it a little bit and then you just bottle it up. And I think that wasn't working. I think it was a band-aid maybe to solve the problem, but it felt wrong. And being able to hear someone else in my life who genuinely and truly cared about me say that actually that wasn't it, that's not the solution, you shouldn't have to stop or hold back any hope you feel or expectations you feel just because you're a little scared of the aftermath, right? And I read this other book by Brene Brown, and she made a really good point that like, if you don't tell anyone what you're hoping for and then you don't get it, you don't feel any less hurt, right? What happens is you remove yourself a chance to be with a support system who can say, "I'm sorry. Like, I know that you really wanted that, and that must suck." And hearing that from another person instead of just hearing it from yourself, you know? And I think that's like, yeah. Yeah. And I see what Brenda put in the chat, that it's more about finding contentment, however things turn out, but still having high hopes. Yeah. And I think that's it, right? Being able to say that, yeah, I think that it's really important to think about the ways in which like you still maintain a sense of hope, because like, it's good to have hope. You want to hope that things are going to turn out okay. And having that sense of hope is actually really important for your mental health. Even if you end up a little disappointed, you will bounce back a lot faster than you think you will. And I think that's true, where especially if you have people around you who can help with that. So it's being able to recognize, like, before my whole think of like, maybe I should hope less. It just wasn't an actual real thing that could happen. And what has worked instead has been able to, yes, find people who reaffirm these things for me, but also being able to share and say that if something didn't work out, it's just nice to have another person say, "Man, that sucks." Like someone who is on your side. And I think that's just really reassuring and nice to have, just because you don't want to be alone in those moments, and being able to seek community. Because like sometimes, like, I don't really use this word, but sometimes it makes you feel a little like a loser, right? You feel like, oh man, I didn't do this right, and therefore I'm not worthy of love or affection. And then that's just inherently wrong. So just having people who are just like, and then reaching out to them and being able to be the one to be like, "So this happened, can you give me a hug?" And I think that can be really nice and effective. And I highly recommend that over the fortune cookie. So
I love that. And I honestly, Dana, like off of your whole experience, especially like everything up until the fortune cookie, like I have the same kind of like mindset before, like, oh, if I just don't have expectations, I'll never be disappointed. Like, you know, if I expect nothing, then I won't have anything to lose, that kind of thing. But it does sound really sad when you step back and you look at it, like, you know, I'm crushing off a very like human part of myself, which is naturally to hope. And like you said, you can't help but hope. And at the end of the day, even if you like try and try again to just squash down whatever hope there is, there's still going to be that tiny piece in there somewhere. So might as well, like, you know, acknowledge it and like find people who you can like feel supported by, instead of just like harboring it and like feeling the full extent of it all by yourself. Like that's really good. I like, for our question, like, yeah, that's kind of how I would deal with it similarly. Like I'm just like, oh, like, you know, like when it came to expectations for like other people or for like things, but like for myself, like I have like really high expectations for some reason, and I just can't help it sometimes. But I'm like, I know I need to work on that. It's something I am working on. But how I cope with that, like, you know, this is like a separate part of it, but like I had a harder time coping with that. I used to be able to like go to my like mom for a support system, but we're more distant now. And so my partner though has been a really great support system. And whenever I like have like a hiccup or like I feel anxious or like nervous, like they've been able to help me out a lot and to let and like they're really reassuring and they let me know that like, oh, like, like sometimes like my expectations are just inhuman. Like, like he'll tell me like, my Leia, like of course like it's okay for you to take a nap in the afternoon between like things, like you should do that. Like, and so like yeah, like getting that, like I don't know, getting that pat on the back from someone really really has helped a lot, and I'm trying to get better about doing that with like other people too, and like and with myself too. Like I look like how you're like Brenda, how you were mentioning like talking, like not listening to these negative thoughts and like trying to like recircuit them, right? I think that's definitely something I want to get back to. I used to do it a little bit in high school where if like I was sad or upset about something, I'd be like, oh, like this is a learning moment. Like I would step back and be like, okay, I'm learning, like I can't change it, I have to just move forward, what can I take away? But like over the years, like I admit like I have not been keeping up with that mindset. And I'm like like every time I've talked in these coffee convos, I'm like, my mindset has changed. Maybe I do need to like start looking into it and trying to get back into that healthy space again. And I feel like it's been helping more and more recently as we get closer to the semester. And so yeah, thank you guys. That's my little piece on my coping too. I'm definitely still learning. But I want to like basically just talk nicer to myself, try to be more patient, and feel okay relying on others and having like some form of like hope when it comes to like things.
That's so great, Mai. I just wanted to say, I think it's okay to have high expectations sometimes. It's like if you don't set your dreams and your goals high enough, you want to have that hope. It gives you a certain drive and confidence to want to keep thriving, and you want to do more. You want to like do so much. I like having that sometimes, and it kind of feels like it might be too radical. Sometimes people think that way, but I don't think anything is too radical. If you can think it, it's not radical, because you have an idea, like it's doable. It's going to take a long time to get there, probably, yeah, because it requires so much research and ideas and figuring out and all the trials and errors. So I don't think having high expectations is a terrible idea. I think it's great for you. I want to dive into answering your question on how have I coped with disappointments in the past. So I wrote some notes. I always feel like I'm trying to learn from my disappointments. So I try to take some time to reflect after the bad times. And it's always having a glass of wine, eating my favorite food, and watching something just to binge it out and like let myself soak a little bit. And then after I do that, that's when I'll dive a little bit deeper and think about, well, what am I missing here? Like, what can I learn from this moment? I also try to talk to people in my life that I admire, people that I feel like I can learn a lot from. Almost people that are a little bit more intimidating because they've achieved so much. And it's like, oh my God, I want to be more like you because you're more confident than me. The way you speak is so well. Like just people that I feel like I can learn from. I try to talk to them more because I know that I can learn so much from them. Another way that I've been coping is just changing my mindset and my perspective on the negative things that come out of a situation. And a lot of that has taken so long to learn to do, learning how to like flip the switch. I think that took a lot of practice because in the beginning for me, it was so hard trying to take something that was so disappointing and beating myself up for it. But over time, it was just like, okay, let's go down the list. Like, let's figure out what I can learn from this so that I can pivot this moment and change it into something that I can actually keep thriving on, like, because I still want to achieve this goal that I've set for myself, or the expectation, but whatever I did before didn't work. So okay, so how do I pivot this and do it another way? Because there's always more than one way to do something, I think, in life, and that's why everyone has different approaches when they're working together. There's always just more than one way to do something, and one way didn't work out for me, so I know there's going to be another way that works better. And all the disappointments that I've had in my life, I feel like I don't have any regrets at all, even though it was like so sad sometimes, or like, you know, you get so mad at yourself. But when I look back at it now, it's just like I have no regrets at all, for sure.
And I'm happy to hear that too. I feel like regret is another thing that like I've like, you know, myself been trying to like come to terms with and like, you know, be able to accept and move on from. And so hearing from you like how you've like coped with it and how like you're able to like move forward really like helps me out a lot. Like I'm like, you know, I want to do these things for myself one day too. And maybe it would be nice for me to get some wine and sulk if I'm disappointed for a little bit, and then give myself the space to really like think about it, not while I'm doing an essay or an assignment due at midnight, but like actual like space for my mind to just like wander. So thank you, Karen, and I love that.
Yeah, definitely. So I think just be mindful of time. We'll jump into our last question. Gosh, we have a lot of really good questions. I'm gonna take a second just to think about which one. How about this one? How about what is something you'd have liked to hear from someone when you've opened up about your disappointment? Just in case anyone listening to this in the recording later, or anyone who's feeling disappointment right now might need to hear some like comforting words. I think I can actually jump in on this one a little bit because I shared a little bit earlier, right? That it's nice to just hear from someone that like you tried, and that counts for something, and that effort is really important. And just being able to acknowledge that it really does suck when things don't turn out the way you want them to, right? And it can hurt worse when you know that like that there is some sense that quote unquote your best is not good enough, but your best is good enough because who you are is already good enough. And we'll just figure out how to move forward from this. And it's okay to take a second to like, I don't know, lick your wounds, be able to say and wallow it in a little bit. We're not here about denying emotions either. There's none of that. Being able to feel all of it so that way you can just have the emotion hit you and then let go of it once it no longer serves you. And I think that can just be something that is really helpful to hear, just so that you can have the full experience of it. Because disappointment is just a part of being human, and like all of the ups and downs of life. And can you really taste the highs of satisfaction if you don't feel what it's like to like sort of like, you know, fall and trip a little bit, right? And I also think that something that I try to remember also is that I always go back to research because I'm a nerd and I love science. But there has been research that there are different types of regrets. And people who did not attempt to do something always feel more regret than someone who did do something and it didn't work out. So knowing that you have done something to avoid regret and being able to take that chance is actually just so much more powerful, and you will be able to live with this way better than if you never attempted it at all. So it's not about the sense that you shouldn't have done this or you shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z, but the fact that you already did it and you are doing things now and we are surviving a pandemic is amazing. So knowing that there is inherent worth in who you are, no matter what sort of like things sort of appeared in your way.
I like that a lot. Thank you, Dana. If I can add something, it would be, I guess, that no matter how hard you try, nothing will go 100% right all the time. Mistakes and failures are expected. Nobody is perfect. We are not perfect. No one is better than you. No one is less than you. You're not here to live life for others. You're here to live it for yourself. So even if you do something that will end up being wrong for someone else, what matters is that you did your best with what you thought was right. And even if you did something where you messed up, like you learned, you're being redirected. And so something that I've like come to realize about like how they say you can learn a lot from kids is because what's been weighing me down with my disappointments has been my guilt. Like it's been just so heavy where I don't even want to get out of bed sometimes. And then I looked it up on like how to help with that, and it was kind of saying like, what good is guilt going to do you? Like it's not going to like change what happened to you, like what actions you took. Like it's not gonna help with anything. And then that's when I thought about like kids, because when you're a kid you mess up all the time and someone just tells you like, hey, don't do this, and then the kid's like, okay, and then they just don't think about it anymore. They go on with their lives happy, like doing their own thing, like playing another game. And like that's kind of how I want to be, like rather than like because that's what I used to do. I'd just sit and I'd like reflect, and like that would like help me at one point, but then after a certain amount of time it stopped helping me, to where I learned the lesson but I couldn't get rid of the guilt, like, oh, like how could you have like done this, how could this have happened to you? But now instead I just think, hey, this happened, this will naturally happen again. All I can do is just be happy, because no one gets to tell you what to feel. No one can choose how you get to feel. Only you get to choose how you feel. So I'll just tell myself, I don't want to think about this anymore. I just want to be happy. And then I just go on from there. And that's what I've been trying to do, is just letting it go once it happens. But yeah, that's my piece.
It's amazing. That was a lot of good things, like preaching. Like I just want to like, yeah, keep going, Brenda. Like you're saying a lot of good things that I want to hear. That was awesome. I would say that what I would love to hear when I share my disappointments is just awesome. Just like when my friends tell me, like, what do you need? What do you need right now? Like in this moment, what do you need? Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to go out for dinner? Do you want to just hang out? Do you want to just be by yourself? I like when someone asks me like, what do you need? Because in those moments, I'm probably not really thinking about what do I need. I'm just too busy thinking about what just happened. And so when someone is bringing the idea of like, oh, what do you need? Like, yeah, you're right. What do I need? I kind of need to think about that for a sec. So I kind of like that question a lot. And then I also like to hear just that some reassurance from people, like, this doesn't really measure like how good you are as a person or how bad you are. There's just no measurement. So just kind of like reassurance is nice. It could be anything, positive affirmations. Everything that Brenda just shared is like basically good affirmations. I love hearing that. And just even not even saying anything at all. If they just like want to come, my friends just want to come over and we're just like hanging out, not talking, like sitting in silence. Sometimes it's kind of like a good coping mechanism for me. What about you, Mai?
Sounds wonderful. And I just saw Dana's comment in the chat. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch this recording again too. Super motivational. I'm just like, if I need to hear like a motivational thing when I wake up in the morning, this is gonna be it. Or when I'm exercising at the gym, this is gonna be it. Like, and I love that. I love everything you guys have shared so far. And thank you, Karen, for sharing all of your awesome pieces too, how candidly you look at things. I know you have you've life experience that I don't have yet. And so like, these are some really good lessons for me to like add to my list as I'm getting older and I'm learning. And yeah, I guess for me, I guess I have this thing with like perfectionism since I was younger because of those expectations. And I think what would have been nice, or like would be nice to hear, is that it's okay. Like you don't have to be perfect. that you're only human and you can make mistakes and still be loved. And you don't have to accomplish everything, or you don't have to accomplish anything at all to deserve love either. That it's not like something you have to earn, and that you just deserve to be happy and to feel loved. And that it's okay, like, you know, if you fall down sometimes, because like there's other people around you who will hopefully help like you stand back up. And that, like, you know, you're not alone in what you do, and that the world is so big and there has to be people out there who will understand what you're going through, who will understand, like, you know, exactly how you feel. And that you need to take your time and take some deep breaths. That Dana, you brought up like the research earlier. One of my classes, we watched a TEDx speaker like last week, and they were talking about, you know, how we spend so much of our time worrying. Like we spend so much time worrying and like spending energy on time on that. I do that a lot, and so I just want to say, like, you know, all these moments that you worry about and that you're worried about, like, because of all the disappointment that you might feel or the disappointment you're worried about giving to other people, these are just moments in your life. Like, this too shall pass. You've made it this far. You're gonna make it through the next day and the next day, because no matter what happens, the world is gonna just keep on spinning. It's gonna keep on turning. And even if you need to take a break for a little bit and get some rest, that means that, you know, no matter what, you still have the chance to like move forward every day. That each day is a new day, and that each morning you wake up is a chance for you to do something good, or to just, you know, even if it means like just resting at home, is a chance for you to be patient with yourself and to like know, like, you know, these expectations, like, you don't have to base your whole worth on them, that you are so much more than that, and that this is only one moment of your life, and that there is hope out there. Yeah. And so yeah, just those self-compassion pieces. And Karen, I really love like how you're saying like, oh, these people like ask me like, oh, what do you need? Like, I love that too. I'm gonna try to start doing that a little bit more, because sometimes, yeah, like sometimes, you know, I might not know exactly what that person needs, but if I can do it and hey, they're able to let me know, then that'll help us both out a lot, you know, smoother. And then like, I think another thing is like sometimes, I feel like sometimes people need like a distraction, like a happy distraction. So even if like, you know, if they're not ready to like talk about it and process it right at that moment, hey, let's set time aside later. You can cry on my shoulder later. Let's go watch a movie. Let's go get some like pizza. Let's like, you know, let's do something else for a little bit and try to like, you know, have some fun. And then like, you know, when you feel ready to talk about it and cry, we'll go somewhere and you can sit down and you can cry. Like, that's okay. So I love that, like, you know, because sometimes people need more time and space to process or think about what they even want to say. So that's an important part. And yeah, thank you guys for everything today too, and like all of your encouragement. It's very heartwarming.
Yes, I want to thank everyone so much. We do want to be mindful of time. Can't believe that hour flew by so fast. But thank you again for joining us for Coffee Convo. I just wanted to share my appreciation, gratitude. I really will be listening to this recording next time I'm disappointed. So many nuggets of wisdom here. So thank you all so much. And I don't know if Maya wants to add any closing statements, but...
Yes, let's keep working on coping with disappointment together, guys. These are some really great strategies. Thank you so much for your inspiration and for coming today and joining us for one of our last coffee convos of the semester. I think it was a very beautiful conversation. Honestly, very much needed. And very like, you know, and I love hearing the different strategies you have. And I hope that, you know, this recording could help other students find those own strategies for themselves too, because disappointment can be hard to cope with, but we can do it, and we deserve to be able to like feel supported in that process. So thank you guys so much for joining us today and sharing everything.